You don't deserve to be here. You're useless and worthless.
Astaria, you have
such a
family
beautiful,
or friends,
inspiring,
you're
creative,
and you're
authentic goddess.
You'll never be
and
successful.
You are so worthy and so deserving of. How to deal with the voices of an eating disorder. First is becoming aware and being able to differentiate between the two, the negative and the positive. The second step is understanding that those negative messages aren't real, that they're not serving you a purpose within your life. As much as you think that they might be, they're not. And if you can sit there and say, tell your best friend or a loved one or a family member these same negative messages, if you can't do that, then why should they be true for you? After that is that any negative messages, any negative voices that you hear, is to be able to counteract them with a positive and life-affirming message. For me, it's also about tuning into them. I always liken it to a radio, and you're aware that there's this channel or this station out there that exists, but it's really faint and there's a whole lot of noise in the background, and you have to fine-tune it in order to be able to play it. And once you start tuning into that station, then it becomes clearer and it becomes louder. And the voices with an eating disorder for me are similar to that, and I think that I've talked about before that for me my life affirming voice only felt like 10% of who I was compared to this loud booming voice of anorexia, which for me took up 90% of who I was. So it was about fine tuning into that little 10% part, and the more focus that I placed on this part, the more clearer it became and the more louder it became. Each part of my healing for myself also was being able to identify what the purpose of anorexia was in my life. And for quite some time I thought that it really didn't have a purpose, it didn't serve any purpose at all, it was just pretty much out to destroy me. And for quite some time I questioned, what is the purpose? Why am I holding on to this? Why is there a part of me that's scared of letting it go? And for me, the conclusion that I came up with, and this sits right with me, is that when I was younger, every aspect that I didn't like about myself, I pretty much cast out here. I cast out away from me, and that was not feeling worthy, that was feeling like I wasn't deserving of life, that was hating my body image, that was hating just a lot of who I was, and I no longer wanted to deal with this, so I projected it out. Once that got projected out, it started to form this identity and size and shape and voice, and eventually that got given the label of anorexia. So for me, the purpose of my eating disorder was to be able to disconnect and dissociate from my body, or more so what was happening here within my life and within my heart, because it was too unbearable to cope with and it was too emotional, and so I projected it out. And the purpose that anorexia served was that it's so time consuming, it's there 24/7. So while I'm living out here outside of my body 24/7, I'm not having to feel or experience anything that's happening in my body. So for me, the purpose was dissociation away from myself. So once I came to that realization, I started looking at anorexia and asking it some different questions. And prior to doing that, though, I realized that anorexia was just every aspect of myself that I didn't like, and so I decided to take away the label anorexia and bring it back home to me, because this stuff out here, this was mine and it needed healing. How that kind of worked for me was, instead of saying anorexia is making me hate myself, anorexia is telling me I'm not worthy, anorexia is telling me I'm not deserving, anorexia hates my body, and so on, I changed that around and started saying, I don't think that I'm worthy, I don't think that I'm deserving, I hate my body. And so I changed the word anorexia and replaced it with I. And then my relationship with anorexia started to change. And so I started asking the questions of, why do you think that you're not worthy? Why do you think that you're not deserving? Why is it that you don't like your body? And it was interesting at this point here, because then I came to the realization that all of the messages that had been replaying in my mind for quite some time were messages that I heard all throughout my childhood, and they came from my mother, from my abusers, from people that I had other bad experiences within my life, and all of those messages came from them. And what once used to be anorexia, I then started to view as my inner child, and this really fearful and scared little person that had taken on so much abuse in her life and had taken meaning from each of those experiences and had taken on messages from each of those experiences. And throughout my whole life I spent dissociating and running from those emotions, from my past, from those feelings. And so later on in my life, when it became too much, as I said earlier, I projected this stuff out and that became anorexia. But as I now see it, that this is my inner child out here, and she's fearful and she's frightened and she's scared, and she's not thinking she's worthy, she's not thinking she's deserving, she doesn't like her body because of what's happened to it. And then she can also get angry. For me, that was just a little part of my story and how I managed to cope with the voices, just being aware of them, being able to differentiate the negative and the bad, being able to counteract those negative voices with positive voices, and being able to identify what purpose does anorexia serve in my life, and really looking behind that, and where did the messages come from, who was saying those messages to you, what experiences have or did you have in your life that reinforced those messages, and really just going back and trying to heal those aspects and those parts of yourself. I thank you for watching this video. I look forward to joining up with you all again next week, where myself and the girls will be sharing our personal stories, so I hope that you all tune in for that. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to send us a message and we will be answering them during our videos. And also, if any of you guys out there want to share your stories with us, we've got space on Saturday and Sunday for that to happen. All you'd need to do is upload a video and let us know that you've done that, and we can put that up on one of those days. In the meantime, take care.